Hello there, wonderful to be with you again. Thank you for joining us. It's wonderful for me to be able to join you. I do keep up on everything that's going on. I keep up on all Sylvia's updates on Kingdom House and everything else. Well done for that, Sylvia. And yeah, what can I say? It's a great time to be together. Before I wanted to start, you can see that I have this ever-increasing books around me. And of course I've got the Blueprint of Life, which you all know about, but also I've got The Journey of Heart, The Signs of the Times, Liquid Truth and Constructional Truth. These are mega good books if you want to just read fundamental doctrine, Christian doctrine, but that makes sense, that's kind of explained in the Holy Spirit, and that is easy to, well, I think it's easy to understand, but these are great books that you can get hold of. These you can get hold of on Amazon as ebooks, and in fact all these books you can get hold of through CLC Office, but you will see it on the screen going across now, the address, etc. So if you'd like anything, just get in touch with us if you can't get it on Amazon or you can't get it through Destiny. Okay, so thank you so much again for being with us. The last time that I spoke with Isaac, he did ask me if I would look at Acts chapter 7 and a few verses from there. And this is something that I call the adventure of life. And it's all about Moses and the way that he grew up and how he came into the things that God had prepared for him. So we're going to read, first of all, we're going to read Acts chapter 7 and from 17 and down to verse 22, and we're going to do it in segments. But if you want to find that, it's Acts chapter 7 and verse 17 down to 22. So it says there, "But when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose who did not know Joseph. This man dealt treacherously with our people and oppressed our forefathers, making them expose their babies so that they might not live. At this time Moses was born and was well pleasing to God, and he was brought up in his father's house for 3 months. But when he was set out, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and brought him up as her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds." It's a fascinating story, this. Absolutely fascinating stuff. But if we take it from verse 17 and just kind of unpack it verse for verse, and it really is all around sonship as well. Because if you want an adventure of life, then it's important that you know your own identity. It's important that you know your DNA. And these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about, which Moses knew. It took him a long time to come into the things of God, but eventually he got into this great adventure. But here it says in verse 17, "But when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham." So God had given a promise to Abraham, and the promise was that he was going to have a great family. More numerous than the stars, more numerous than the sand. And that God was going to bring this about. It was going to make him his own nation. It was going to be an incredible thing to behold. But it says, when the time of the promise drew near. So, in other words, the promise was coming close. It was getting closer and closer to the fulfillment of it. And of course, when a promise begins to come close to its fulfillment, there's various things that begin to happen. And we can see there that that here it says that the people grew and multiplied. So as the promise grows closer, there is something that goes on internally with people, and that is that they begin to grow. They begin to grow themselves into the promise, because the promise is not so much external as it is internal. So God gave them a promise, but actually the promise was beginning to grow on the inside of them, and they grew into the promise themselves. It's like a lot of the time, sometimes God gives us a word and we can see this destination and we go, that is where I want to be. But actually, it's not just getting to the destination that's important. It's actually the journey of getting to the destination. That is where we grow. And what we find is we grow into the promise itself. So, of course, this is a promise that God gave to Abraham. It's getting closer now. The people are growing and multiplying. So the very word that God had already given Abraham is in some ways already coming about. And now, as it's growing nearer to the time of the full fulfillment of it, there's things begin to happen. There's some good things, there's growing and multiplication, because, of course, we grow externally, we grow in such a way as, first of all, we're added to. It says the believers were added to in Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 4, I believe. It says that God added to the number. But eventually it goes on that they multiplied. So when you begin to multiply, growth becomes much faster. Much faster. So this is what's happening with the people externally. They're growing and multiplying in Egypt. And Egypt, of course, is this place of bondage and slavery. It's not an easy place for the people to be. But in this place, and this is what we find, we go to Nepal, we go to Kenya, we go to places where actually there's an oppressive environment, there's a persecution that goes on, there's things that seem to want to stop the external growth, but all the time people are growing inside because they know that there's something better than what they're presently the present environment gives them. So they begin to grow internally, and the promises of God take on a reality internally. And of course this is what was happening in the midst of Egypt, but they're growing externally as well. They're multiplying now. And it says there that another king arose who did not know Joseph. Now this is really interesting, because it seems to me that Joseph was a man on whom was the favour of God. And just think about what Joseph went through. Think about his imprisonments, the false accusations, the things that he went through in order to get to this place that God had destined for him. But this place was going to be a place not only where he himself came into his fullness, but actually the favour of God went on in such a way that the whole nation came into something new through Joseph. That's a pretty amazing thought, that the favour of God was on one man, and on that one man God opened doors for thousands and millions of people. Now the question is, just for you, and you can question yourself through all of these things that I'm saying, because it applies to us, the promise that God's given you, do you see it? Is it growing nearer? Is it being fulfilled? What's going on around you because of it? You can just have a look at the environment, have a look at yourself internally, have a look at what's going on externally, see what God's doing with the promises that he's given you, because that's an exciting thing to see. But also understand this, that there are people that God has placed in your life in whom God has put favour. There's certain people who you know who they break open for you, they give you access, they do something for you that brings you into a greater spaciousness. It's up to you to identify those people, because of course we all need people like that. We all need people around us who we see God has put something special in them. God has given them a gift. There's something in them that opens doors for me. There's something that they have that I need, that I must follow, I must pursue in order to get what they've got and come into this greater spaciousness. You've got to identify who are the Josephs in your life. Who are the people that open doors and give you access? And when you've found them, you have to celebrate them. It's really important, because a lot of the time we spend lots of time with people who actually do nothing for us. They don't add anything to us. They don't. All they do is just take from us all the time. But actually there's people that God's given us who put into us, open doors for us, and give us access and spaciousness for our futures. Now it's important that we recognise those people and we identify who they are. And once we've done it, we need to celebrate them. Celebrate those people who celebrate you. That's an important thing, isn't it? To celebrate those people who celebrate you. Because they're an indication to people that you should be spending your time with. And it's incredible, isn't it, that the Pharaoh knew Joseph in such a way that he opened doors not only for Joseph, But as those doors opened, they opened for the people of God. Incredible. So who is it that is bringing favour into your life? Who is it that's bringing access? Who is it that's opening doors for you? You've got to think about and identify them and keep close to them because they're special into your life. They can help you a lot. So anyway, it says here in verse 18 that there was another king that arose who did not know Joseph. And of course, because he didn't know Joseph, neither did he recognise the people. So the recognition of the people of God came through one man called Joseph. When Joseph was no longer recognised by the king didn't recognise the people either. That's an amazing truth, an amazing thing. And we don't understand it. And in this day and age, when we are so individual and so independent, these kind of things, we don't really like them, because it means that actually God's favour may rest on someone in a different way to it rests on me. They may have a different grace to me, and if I'm going to see that and celebrate and enjoy it, it means that I've got to recognise that person, and I've got to honour that person and respect him. Well, in this day and age, we don't really have much time for those kind of things. We all want something for ourselves. We're all interested about our own lives, and actually, we're not so interested about everybody else. But I want to tell you, times are changing. God's doing great things, and He's using people around you right now to help you get where you need to go. And He's doing the same for me. But you've got to recognise it and identify it. So, anyway, going on, it says, this man, so this other king, it says that he dealt treacherously with our people and oppressed our forefathers. So now we've got a different king who comes in. It's no longer Pharaoh. It's no longer the man that knew Joseph and therefore recognised the people. No, that man's gone. And now there's a man that's dealing treacherously with the people of God. And it says this is a giveaway, isn't it? He oppressed our forefathers. Now this is what happens when fathers get pressed, because the oppression of forefathers is the pressing down. The if you want, the depression of them, there's an oppression upon them that depresses them inside and actually causes them, because they become, and if you think about Egypt, it said that their labour got intense. They were labouring and labouring, they were working every hour, they were flogging themselves to death, and literally some of them were being flogged to death, but actually they were slaves and in bondage, and now the fathers were being oppressed. And as the fathers became oppressed, they actually got weary. And as they got weary, and as they got disappointed and disillusioned, what did they do? They gave up the very thing that was most important to them. And so it says here, making them expose their babies. And of course we look and we go, okay, the babies were actually the natural offspring. Of course it was the babies. This is how great the oppression was in Egypt, that they were pressed down so much, disappointed, disillusioned, that actually they gave up the very offspring. And the Pharaoh at the time was then able to take them and get rid of them, because he didn't want the nation to grow. He didn't want the people to grow anymore. He wanted to stop this growth.